To understand a city, it is not enough to walk through its streets. One must see its fears, its disasters, its power struggles, and its daily life all at once. In the 1600s, London was exactly such a place: crowded, dangerous, wealthy, chaotic, and becoming a power centre that would shape the world. The waters of the Thames carried not only ships, but the future of an empire. Now we set out on a journey into this city's most intense, most fragile, and most defining moments. By the 1600s, London's population had approached 500,000, making it one of the largest cities in Europe. It was a dense and rapidly expanding metropolis shaped by trade, river traffic, and the uninterrupted movement along the Thames. By the early 1600s, Old London Bridge was far more than an ordinary river crossing. Rising above the River Thames, it was a tightly built-up street that connected the City of London with Southwark. Houses, shops, warehouses, chapels and gate structures completely filled the bridge. From a distance, it appeared less like a bridge and more like an uninterrupted settlement stretching across the water. The bridge was constructed upon narrow stone arches supported by massive piers. These arches compressed the tidal flow of the Thames passing beneath them, creating strong currents that made passage dangerous. River traffic, attempting to navigate between the arches, encountered violent water movement, and accidents were frequent. The buildings atop the bridge rose several stories high, often projecting over the roadway and narrowing the passage. Residents lived their lives above the constant movement of carts, horses, and pedestrians passing below. Fire was a constant threat. Congestion was inevitable, and yet people continued to live and work there for generations. To pass over Old London Bridge was not only to move along a vital artery of commerce, but also to pass beneath visible symbols of authority and control. Below, the Thames served as London's primary transportation route. Barges carrying grain, timber, coal, cloth, and imported goods filled the waters, along with ferries, trading vessels, and small riverboats. The river connected London to England's interior regions, to Europe, and to the wider Atlantic world. Thus, the bridge became a central point where local life intersected with global trade. During harsh winters, the constricted flow beneath the bridge's arches could contribute to the river freezing. In these rare periods, the Thames briefly transformed, and people gathered to walk upon the ice beneath the bridge. This sight stood in sharp contrast to the danger the river usually contained. This image shows the northern entrance of the bridge. It is seen approaching from beside St. Magnus the Martyr Church on the left. By the middle of the century, the bridge had seriously deteriorated, and authorities decided to clear and reorganize it. Between 1756 and 1762, the structures that had filled Old London Bridge for centuries were gradually removed. Although the painting dates from the 1700s, it depicts a crossing that shaped London for centuries. What is striking is that this site can still be visited today. What made Old London Bridge remarkable was not only its engineering, but also the continuity it demonstrated as a living space. It functioned as infrastructure, marketplace, neighborhood, and symbol all at once. Kings and ordinary people alike passed through it. Merchants and laborers worked there. Those arriving in London for the first time experienced the city in this narrow passage. Old London Bridge was crowded, dim, and often unhealthy. It slowed traffic, constrained trade, and posed constant danger for those who lived and worked upon it. Yet it remained indispensable for centuries. Until the 18th century, it stood as the only permanent crossing over the Thames in central London, inevitably channeling movement between north and south through this point. Sometimes I find myself wishing I could return to this place in its former state, even if only for a single day. For now, this artificial intelligence reconstruction is the closest I can come to that dream. This is Buckingham House in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. Long before it became Buckingham Palace, it was built as a private residence on London's western edge, surrounded by open land and gardens, far from the dense urban centre. At that time, this area represented the boundary between urban London and the countryside. It revealed that even as the city's density increased, its limits were still distinctly felt. In September 1666, London faced one of the most devastating disasters in its history. What began as a small spark quickly spread through a city largely built of timber, filled with narrow streets and tightly packed buildings, and grew into an uncontrollable force. The first image shows Ludgate engulfed in flames, while the square tower of old St. Paul's Cathedral is visible in the distance. Within a short time, this magnificent structure would also be lost. The second image looks from the Thames near Tower Wharf on the evening of September 4th. London appears as an unbroken line of fire. On the left stands London Bridge. On the right, the Tower of London narrowly escapes destruction. Old St. Paul's burns at the centre of the silhouette. Within days, much of medieval London was reduced to ashes. Yet the fire marked a turning point. It cleared away centuries of accumulation and forced the city to rebuild, reorganise, and begin anew. Rising above the river, the Tower of London stood at the centre of royal authority in the 1600s. During this period, it functioned as a fortress, arsenal, treasury, and one of England's most notorious prisons. Prominent prisoners accused of treason were held within its walls. The tower also housed royal records, weapons, and the crown jewels, making it not merely a place of punishment, but a foundational element of the English state. This scene depicts Cheapside in 1638. One of London's most important ceremonial streets, it is shown during the procession, marking the entry of Marie de Medici's daughter, Queen Henrietta Maria, who came to visit King Charles I. Cheapside was not only a commercial thoroughfare, but also a stage for royal spectacle, lined with water conduits, crosses, and temporary structures. At its centre stood the Cheapside Cross, a familiar landmark and gathering point. As soldiers, officials, and crowds filled the street beneath the display, such moments reflected the growing political and religious tensions stirred by Henrietta Maria's Catholic faith and foreign origins in a city already drifting toward civil war. Today, the same street survives as modern Cheapside in the City of London, near St. Mary-le-Bow. Although its medieval symbols have disappeared, the street itself endures. This image shows the political and religious complex at Westminster in 1647, viewed from across the Thames during a period of deep division in England. On the left stands the old Palace of Westminster, the seat of Parliament and the centre of political power. By the mid-17th century, especially during the English Civil War, it had become the focal point of the growing conflict between monarchy and Parliament. Beside it rises Westminster Hall, one of the oldest and most magnificent parts of the palace, used for law courts, state trials, and major public gatherings. Its vast roof once symbolised royal authority, only later becoming a stage upon which that authority was challenged. On the right stands Westminster Abbey, the spiritual heart of the nation. For centuries it hosted coronations, royal funerals, and the burials of kings and queens, reinforcing the sacred dimension of monarchy. In 1647, the abbey stood in an uneasy balance between tradition and turmoil, as religious divisions reshaped England's institutions. At the centre of the scene are the Westminster Stairs, a busy river landing where passengers arrived and departed by boat. Before bridges and paved roads dominated travel, the Thames served as London's main artery, carrying politicians, clergy, messengers, and citizens directly to the doors of power. This engraving shows Whitehall Palace in 1643, then the largest royal residence in England and the monarch's principal home. From these river-facing steps, kings and courtiers arrived by boat, underscoring the Thames as London's corridor of transport and authority. Stretching along the Thames, Whitehall was not a single palace, but a vast complex of halls, chambers, and administrative buildings from which royal government was conducted. Much of it was destroyed by fire at the end of the 17th century, and today only the banqueting house remains, the last remnant of what was once the centre of royal life. This is Richmond Palace in the late 16th and early 17th centuries, one of the most important royal residences outside central London. It was originally rebuilt by Henry VIII on the site of a medieval manor. Richmond served as a preferred retreat for Tudor and early Stuart monarchs, offering cleaner air and wider space away from the crowded city. Elizabeth I spent her final days here, dying at the palace in 1603 and marking the end of the Tudor dynasty. Over time, the palace fell out of use and was gradually dismantled. Today, its grounds form part of modern Richmond. Traces of its walls and layout survive beneath streets and riverside paths. Standing here and looking at these moments, it is difficult not to feel how close the past truly is. These streets, these buildings, these events shaped the world we live in today. Because cities are not merely stone and brick, they are living organisms that accumulate memory layer upon layer. Every step London took in the 1600s still forms the foundation of one of the world's most influential cities. The past did not disappear, it was only covered over, and with every reconstruction we lift that covering just a little more.